Hey everyone, I hope you're doing great and following the 3 H's of the channel. In this video, I have some crazy encounters for you. I have more from Vermont and others from all over the place. If that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. At the time this happened, I wasn't in a very good mental space. I was camping extremely deep in the woods. 3 months before this excursion, my best friend had died from bronchial cancer. I had to get away from everything for as long as I could. This particular night, I decided to get drunk, really drunk, and in this emotional state, I started to wander, and I was camping in the 6th largest national forest in the USA. I kept thinking about all the good times with my friend and the days gone by. By this point, I don't remember much else. As I'm experiencing the emotions, I keep getting drunker and drunker to the point where it's dangerous. But I didn't care. I just missed my friend. At some point, I get lost. I can't see anything. It's pitch black out and I have no light. I pass out, leaning up against a tree, and then I wake up. It's daytime. I'm back at my tent. I instantly start to cry. To this day, I know in my heart that my friend helped me in my lowest state to get back to my camp safely, and I still thank him for it every day. So I have some personal spooky experiences that happened in Vermont. We have a lot of cryptids here, like Champ, the Pigman of Northfield, Bigfoot, Dogman, and you basically can't throw a rock without hitting something haunted. I'll start off with one of my own. My whole family attracts weird stuff like lightning rods. I grew up always seeing weird stuff pretty much all the time. Older relatives told me about even scarier stuff that happened to them. The scariest was a monster that lived in the ditch near the house my family lived in way before I was born. This would have been the 70s and early 80s. My uncle is the most sensitive to the paranormal in the whole family. He was a little kid at the time. He would say that there's a monster called the Aya that lived in the ditch and it kept trying to get him to go over and play with it. I heard about this in the 90s when I was about the same age as my uncle was back then. My uncle is a good artist, so I asked him to draw what this creature looks like. He draws this thing with baggy skin that hangs off of its bones. It has long hair on the body, stout legs like an ape, and long arms. Its head looks like something out of Tales from the Crypt Keeper, like a skull with skin stretched tight, sunken eyes, no nose, and a few strands of long hair dangling from the scalp like Golem. The thing has 2 fangs that are pointed upward from the lower jaw. This drawing really creeped me out. I was looking at the drawing alone in my room one time, and I swear that the drawing shifts its head slightly so it's looking straight at me. I fold up the drawing and stick it under the post of my bed, and then the drawing disappeared. I have no idea what happened to it. Another one. I was driving north on the I-89 sometime in the mid-2000s. It was dark out, but not super late. My mom was driving. I'm in the back seat with my best friend. We round this bend that's just north of exit 15. I see what I thought at first was a plane over the quarry next to exit 16. The more I stare at it, the less it looks like a plane. There's way too many lights, and there's no pattern to them. Some are colors that you don't typically see on a plane. This thing is jet black, aside from the lights. I can't even get a feel for what shape it is. As we get closer, I notice that it's not moving. It's just stuck in the same spot. This huge mass of lights is just hovering over the quarry. I don't say anything because I'm stunned by what I see. I watch it for a minute or so as we go past exit 16, and it disappears behind us. I ask, "Did anyone see that?" Everyone says, "See what?" I should have said something sooner, so maybe I wouldn't have looked crazy. And here's another one that I can tie to a personal experience. My grandmother once told me a story that her father told her. When great-grandfather was young, he saw the devil when walking by a river. I didn't really get any more details than that. So fast forward to around the year 2000, I was 11 years old. I was home alone one afternoon. I was sitting in the living room organizing a deck of tarot cards. I put the devil card on the bottom of the stack because the illustration creeped me out. And then I turned my head slightly to the right to look at something else just for a second. I don't even remember what it was. I turned back, and the devil card is on top of the stack. I freak out. The card jumped to the top of the stack in the split second that I took my eyes off it. And then I hear something outside. I look out the window. There's 14 acres of flat field with nothing but a swing set and a jungle gym type thing about 20 feet from the back of the house. I see what looks like a naked man with a pot belly, horns, and red skin leaning against the fire pole on the swing set, staring at me. I can even see the sunlight reflecting off of him. I call Mom and have her come get me. I have more stories too. This one is one that my mom told me. So she was living in the same house that my uncle saw the AI in. It was the same time period as well. The place was generally just haunted. She was doing dishes with a different uncle. There was a stack of dried dishes that was sitting on the countertop that levitated straight up. The dish on the bottom of the stack flies out and smashes on the kitchen floor. Both my mom and my uncle saw it. Another time, my mom was in a bedroom with my uncle that saw this creature. There was this full-length mirror that was facing the bed, and then suddenly my uncle asks, "Who's that man sitting on the bed?" while looking in the mirror. Mom looks at the bed and looks at the mirror, and it's gone. My great-grandparents' house was haunted as all hell. When my grandmother was little, her room had a walk-in closet with a door to the attic or something like that. She would hear things in the closet at night. The closet door would open and close on its own, and sometimes when it opened, you could see glowing figures and humanoid shadows that would come through the door. The basement was one of those old-fashioned basements that's halfway between a basement and a crawl space. It had low ceilings, stone walls, and a dirt floor. My mother absolutely refused to go down there when she was little because she saw those same things down there, but wouldn't give me details. And to end this off, I have a short one. It was in a place I lived from the ages of 3 to 8 in the 1990s. I found out just a few years ago that someone apparently died during the construction of that house. This is also the place I was living when my uncle drew me that picture that seemed to move. The whole time I lived there, I kept seeing a little shadow person. The thing was like 3 feet tall and wore a hooded robe. It would always peek around the corner to look at me. I thought it looked like a Jawa made of shadows. Jawas are those things from Star Wars. In that house too, I had a rocking horse, and one night I went to bed with my toys surrounding it. I distinctly remember that I had one of those McDonald's Sleeping Beauty toys of the evil queen that you could turn into the old woman. I had it set as the old woman. I was laying in bed, and I began to hear a squeaking sound. I look over to find the source of the noise. The rocking horse is rocking by itself full tilt, as if someone were riding it like a mechanical bull. The McDonald's toy was now placed on the step leading up to it. The toy was swapped to the evil queen, and it was turned in a position that was staring directly at me. I got up and ran into my mom's room screaming. We eventually ended up donating the rocking horse and that McDonald's toy to my aunt's daycare. The whole thing still weirds me out all these years later. Something happened a long time ago to me. I was around 11. I was living in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. Everyone knows everyone in my town, and everyone's friends. Everyone knows each other's uncles and aunts. That's how small it is. Our next door neighbor was a really sweet widow. She was slightly older than my parents. Her kids go away to university, so we used to invite her to dinner pretty often, because the way we looked at it, nobody should eat alone, especially in our town. We take care of each other. So I was playing around the woods with the next door neighbors one day. There's a creek that's a bit of a ways away, and we go there on weekends. It's a fun little hangout spot for us. So we go to this creek to finish building our little base that we had there. We arrive at the place as we usually do, but this time something's different. The place stinks like death. We see something in the tall grass surrounding the creek. Our neighbor, the widow, is lying in the creek, very clearly dead, and she has been for quite some time. There's signs of animal predation, and there's flies everywhere. The face is bloated, but untouched by wildlife, so we know it's her. We run back to our parents immediately and as fast as we can, screaming and crying. I run through the front door, yelling for Mom. I run into the living room, and the neighbor is sitting with her by a coffee table, sipping tea. She turns her head slowly and looks at me. I back out of the room and go to Dad's garage. I tell him what happened and what we saw. Obviously, he thinks I'm dumb, but he does call the police and tells them that they should really check out something in the woods. The kids say it's a dead body. But after that, the neighbor starts visiting us less and less. I see her sitting on the porch, staring into the distance often, which is something that she never did before. Her garden becomes an absolute mess, and she begins to always look disheveled. My parents would say it's depression, but I always knew better, because when she looked back at me in the living room, her eyes were completely black. So something happened about 10 years ago that was really terrifying to me. I used to hang out in the woods at night. I don't know why, it was always just calming to me. But I stumbled on what looked like an abandoned campsite this particular time. The tents were shredded. There was trash laying around everywhere. I remember thinking that it was weird that people were camping this far into the woods. I was only a few miles in, but people cook meth and stuff out here, so it's not real safe. I decided to look around the campsite some more. I spent a while trying to think of a rational explanation as to what the hell could have shredded the tents and trashed the campsite so badly. Just as I'm about to leave, I hear something walk up behind me. I turn around. Nothing. I start walking away from the campsite. I hear the footsteps again, but this time they were different, more like a stomping. I turn around again, and again, absolutely nothing. I pick up the pace a little. If one of the meth cooks is trying to scare me, I definitely got the message by this point. I walk about a mile, and then stuff started getting really spooky. I heard the footsteps again, but this time, whatever it was wasn't just silently walking or stomping. It was sprinting and fast. I started running, but the thing was keeping pace with me almost without effort. At one point, it got so close that I swore I felt its breath on the back of my neck. I get out of the woods after what seems like hours of running. The thing stops dead in its tracks. Like it didn't even slow down first, it just stopped. I didn't get a very good look at it, but I saw its silhouette. The thing looked impossibly skinny, like something had been starving for ages and had legs that were longer than the rest of its body. I shined my flashlight on it, which I really wish I wouldn't have. The thing didn't have a mouth, just a mouth painted on with what I assumed was blood. The same thing with its eyes. I turn and I run until I eventually get to my house. I lock it up tight. I sleep in my bathtub with my shotgun by my side all night. I went back to that campsite in the daylight, and nothing was there. And I don't mean nothing as in the campsite had just been cleaned up. I meant nothing as in it looked like that nothing had ever been there in the first place. Seriously, screw this state. I grew up on a 75-acre farm in East Texas, the Arklatex specifically. Now I'm an adult piecing all of these together, and I realize that this thing has been a part of my life much longer than I originally thought. The first ever sighting that I can remember was when I was about 8. It was probably 11 p.m., pitch black. I was crossing our bridge over a small creek to get to the fire pit that was only a few meters away. But before I could get there, I stopped in my tracks because I saw 2 red eyes staring back at me. I couldn't give you the exact height, but 8-year-old me could tell that it was taller than my grandfather, therefore not my grandfather, and therefore I needed to haul ass in the opposite direction. I quickly ran back to the house in tears and told him what happened. He told me that it was just Spider's eyes reflecting in the moonlight. Believing that he knew all there was to know, I accepted this explanation and forgot about it. This was until 2016. The second sighting that I can recall was when I was 16 or so. The same plot of land, just on the opposite end where my mother had decided to build her house. It was around 7 p.m. I went for a walk down to my mother's pond. About halfway there, I see a white figure on the very top of a pine tree next to the pond. It quickly shuffled behind the foliage and out of sight, so I could just see speckles of white peeking through. At first, I thought, wow, an albino raccoon. I was not at all scared, but something quickly turned my guts in my stomach and told me to turn around and head home. So I did. And instantly, I was overwhelmed with crippling fear, like that of sleep paralysis. I speed-walked my way back to the house. I don't remember if I mentioned it to my mother at this point, or at the 4th sighting, which was by far the scariest. The 3rd time I saw it, it was either the same year or next. I was on my way to the pond again. This time, it was in between me and the pond, on the ground, on all 4s. Here I had a pretty good visual, and the best description that I've been able to come up with is a very tall man in a full-body white spandex suit. Again, I got scared and speed-walked home. I never ran. Something told me not to run. The 4th time I saw it was not long after the last 2. It was around 10 p.m., and I realized that I forgot to feed my horse. I walked out to his pen with my flashlight out. Before I got all the way there, I saw his eyes shining at me, so I excitedly skipped up to him. When I got near him, he made a very strange huffing noise that I hadn't heard him make before. It was at this point I heard rustling in a different area of the pen. When I shined my light, I saw my horse. What was 4 feet in front of me was not my horse. My body went rigid, and I had to fight every cell in my body to make my legs take me back home. When I made it back in, I went to tell my mother, but she had gone to bed. I waited for the next day and told her everything. My mom's an avid believer in weird things like that, so she listened to me intently, and rather than telling me it was nothing, She told me that whatever it is, she would cleanse and bless the house and it would go away. Now, I don't believe this thing is a ghost or a spirit, so I don't think it can be cleansed out, but I didn't see it again for the remaining time that I lived there. I moved to a big city 8 hours away and forgot all about it. Up until more recently, it's been on my mind quite a lot. I will be going home to see my mother soon. I certainly don't expect a sighting, nor do I want one. I always feel like the next time I see it will be my last, or that it's an omen of death. I don't know. I do know that this creature had many, many opportunities to hurt me, and it did not. It just scared the hell out of me. I should also add that I mentioned this to one other person, a friend of mine. When I gave my friend its description, she became very upset and wanted to change the subject. After some prying, she eventually told me that she had seen the same thing at a lake 30 minutes from my house, Elliott, Texarkana Lake, and that it chased her and another girl on all fours. She asked again to change the subject and never mention it again. If anyone else in East Texas has seen this creature, I'd love to hear about it. As much as it scares me, I struggle with convincing myself that it was real. So, what'd you think of those encounters? I thought they were pretty great, but if there was one for you that stuck out, feel free to let me know which one it was down in the comments. And if you have your own, I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. Also down there is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way, and super thanks here on YouTube. And with that, I think I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and thank you for watching. I'll see you Friday.